We are coming to you with urgent breaking developments out of northern Israel. And what is unfolding in the footage pouring into our screens right now demands your full attention. Because what you are about to hear is not a continuation of what this conflict has looked like until tonight. Iran has opened the northern front. Nahariya is burning. Videos are arriving from multiple sources on the ground, from residents, from journalists, from security cameras still transmitting before the infrastructure around them fails. What those videos show is a city in the north of Israel absorbing missile impacts on a scale that nobody tracking this conflict had anticipated from this direction, at this hour, with this intensity. Fires visible across the urban skyline. Emergency vehicles unable to reach impact zones because the roads into those zones are themselves damaged. Sirens that began minutes ago and have not stopped. And here is what every defense analyst watching this footage is confronting in real time. The Patriot didn't fire. The Iron Dome didn't fire. Or when they fired, the missiles reached their targets anyway. We want to be precise about that statement because the distinction matters enormously. There are two possible scenarios consistent with what the footage shows, and both of them are catastrophic for different reasons. The first possibility is that the defense systems in the Nahariya corridor were saturated, fired upon by a volume of incoming missiles that exceeded the number of interceptors available, meaning Iran simply overwhelmed the system mathematically. The second possibility is worse. The second possibility is that the systems engaged, launched interceptors, and the interceptors failed to kill the incoming missiles before they arrived. Either way, Nahariya is burning tonight. Let us address why the northern theater matters in a way that is categorically different from what has been happening further south. Nahariya sits in the western Galilee, 11 kilometers south of the Lebanese border. It is one of the northernmost cities in Israel proper. Not a forward military position, not an industrial target on the periphery. A city, hospitals, residential neighborhoods, a coastline that in peacetime draws tourists from across the country. Approximately 50,000 people living in an urban environment that was, until the images we are now receiving, outside the zone of heaviest engagement in this conflict. The significance of Nahariya is not just geographic, it is architectural, in the military sense of that word. Northern Israel sits within a threat envelope that has always been understood as the domain of Hezbollah, rather than Iran's direct ballistic missile force. The range mathematics of this conflict assigns certain weapons to certain sectors. Iranian long-range ballistic missiles were the threat to the south and center, to Tel Aviv, to the Negev, to the central population belt. The north was the Hezbollah problem. The short-range rockets, the anti-tank systems, the tunnel infrastructure, the precision-guided munitions that Hezbollah has been accumulating for years with Iranian technical and financial support. What is hitting Nahariya tonight does not fit that threat model. It fits a different one. And if the initial analysis coming from sources monitoring the engagement is correct, then Iran has done something tonight that the defense architecture covering northern Israel was not fully configured to defeat. Because the Patriot batteries covering this corridor were positioned for the threat that was expected, and the threat that arrived was different. Here is the technical reality that the American and Israeli defense establishment is processing in real time as this footage comes in. The Patriot system, specifically the PAC-3 and PAC-3 MSE variants deployed in support of Israeli air defense, operates on a fundamental principle of predictive intercept. The radar tracks an incoming missile. The system calculates where that missile will be at a specific point in the future based on its current trajectory. The interceptor launches to arrive at that predicted point. The interceptor and the incoming missile occupy the same space at the same moment, and the incoming missile is destroyed. That model works brilliantly against a missile that goes where its trajectory says it will go. A missile following a ballistic arc. A missile whose physics are Newtonian and whose flight path, once established, can be solved mathematically with high confidence. It does not work against a missile that changes where it is going. Iran's maneuvering hypersonic systems and the evidence accumulating from multiple waves of this conflict strongly suggest that what is now being fired at northern Israel includes maneuvering warheads, alter their flight path during terminal descent. They do not follow the arc the radar computed. They are somewhere other than where the intercept solution predicted. And the Patriot interceptor committed to a flight path aimed at a point in space that the incoming missile has already left, misses. The Iron Dome was never designed for this threat at all. We have addressed this in previous coverage, and the facts have not changed. Iron Dome's kill chain, its engagement timeline, its interceptor speed, its radar integration, was optimized against the slow, low-altitude rockets that Hamas and Hezbollah have fired in previous conflicts. Against a hypersonic maneuvering warhead arriving at terminal velocities that compress the engagement window to seconds or fractions of seconds, the system cannot generate a successful intercept solution before the decision window closes. What you are watching in the footage from Nahariya is the convergence of those two failure modes. A Patriot system engaged against a maneuvering threat it was not tuned to defeat. An Iron Dome system facing speeds it was never built to handle. And the result of that convergence is visible on your screen right now. There is a second dimension of tonight's development that demands analysis beyond the purely technical. Nahariya's position in the northern theater is not random. It is not a city that happens to be geographically convenient. It sits in a corridor that connects the Lebanese border to the Haifa metropolitan area, one of Israel's critical port facilities, its refinery infrastructure, its naval installations. An adversary striking Nahariya is not simply striking a city of 50,000 people. It is probing the corridor that leads to one of Israel's most significant industrial and military infrastructure concentrations on the Mediterranean coast. Whether tonight's strikes on Nahariya represent a probe, a test of northern defense architecture before a deeper push toward Haifa, or whether they are intended as a strike in their own right, is a question that Israeli military planners are asking with extreme urgency right now. Because the answer determines how they reposition, how they redistribute their interceptor reserves, and how they prioritize the defense of a coast that, until tonight, had not been the primary axis of this conflict. The American position in this theater is now exposed in a way that creates political consequences alongside the operational ones. Patriot batteries are American systems, not Israeli systems that received American components and American software and American training. American systems in some cases operated with American technical personnel present, deployed in defense of Israeli territory under the framework of the defense cooperation that has defined the U.S.-Israel relationship for decades. When Patriot batteries fail to stop missiles from reaching Israeli cities, when the footage comes in, as it is coming in right now, showing impact after impact in a city that American and Israeli defense architecture was supposed to protect, the failure is not only Israel's to absorb. Every nation that has purchased Patriot systems is watching this coverage. Every ally that has been sold the American air defense package, the PAC-3, the THAAD, the layered architecture that Washington has offered as the premium solution to the ballistic missile threat, is watching what those systems are doing against Iran's most capable weapons tonight. And the answer to that question, visible in the footage from Nahariya, is one that American defense contractors, American military officials, and American diplomats will be explaining to partner governments for months after this conflict concludes. The Iranian calculus in striking Nahariya tonight is also worth examining, because Iranian decisions in this conflict have consistently carried more strategic logic than Western commentary has given them credit for. Nahariya opening a northern vector does something specific to Israeli defense planning. It forces a distribution problem. Israeli interceptor reserves, already under serious pressure from the waves of strikes that have targeted the central and southern population belt, must now cover an additional axis. Every interceptor committed to the north is an interceptor not available for the center. Every battery redeployed toward the Lebanese corridor is a battery no longer covering Tel Aviv. Iran does not need to destroy Israel's defense infrastructure directly. It needs to stretch it, to force Israeli commanders to make choices that leave gaps, and then to drive missiles through those gaps. That is the strategy visible in tonight's strikes on Nahariya, if you understand what you are watching. Not a random escalation, a calculated geometric expansion of the threat envelope designed to multiply the decision burden on an already strained defense architecture. The people in those videos from Nahariya, the residents filming from shelters, from windows, from streets where emergency services are responding to impacts, are experiencing something that the political and strategic establishment that launched this conflict told them their defense systems would prevent. They were told the systems would hold. The systems are not holding. Understanding why requires confronting an intelligence and planning failure that extends beyond any individual decision or any individual system. For years, the design philosophy behind Israeli and American air defense rested on an assumption about the threat. That assumption said, Iran's missiles are dangerous, but they are ultimately ballistic. They follow predictable paths. They can be tracked, calculated, intercepted. The physics work in the defender's favor as long as the defense system is fast enough, accurate enough, and numerically sufficient. That assumption has been disproven wave by wave in this conflict. And the disproof is continuing tonight, in Nahariya, in footage that shows impacts landing inside a city that a Patriot battery and an Iron Dome installation were supposed to protect. What happens in the hours ahead will define the military and political trajectory of this war. Israel cannot absorb footage of northern cities burning without a response that demonstrates its ability to impose costs on Iran at a scale that changes Iranian calculations. The pressure on Israeli military and political leadership to strike back with severity, to answer the images from Nahariya with images of Iranian targets suffering consequences of equivalent or greater scale, will be immediate and intense. But the strategic trap that this conflict has built for both Israel and the United States has not changed. Every escalation from this point forward operates in an environment where Iran has demonstrated it can reach Israeli cities, where the defense systems that were supposed to prevent that reality have not performed as advertised, where each additional wave of Israeli and American strikes against Iran may or may not further degrade Iran's missile forces, and where Iran has demonstrated repeatedly that it retained more capacity for retaliation than the opening strikes were calculated to destroy. Nahariya has joined Tel Aviv on the list of Israeli cities that have absorbed Iranian missile fire in this conflict. That list should not exist. The strategies, the systems, the intelligence assessments, and the planning assumptions that were supposed to prevent that list from existing have failed. The videos from northern Israel tonight are the evidence, and they will be studied in war colleges, in defense ministries, in intelligence agencies on every continent, for as long as people study the question of what missile defense can and cannot do against the most advanced weapons a determined adversary can produce. We are monitoring every incoming report from the Nahariya corridor and the broader northern theater. We are tracking Israeli military repositioning, Iranian communications, and the American force posture in this theater. Tonight in the north is not over, and what it looks like by morning will determine whether this conflict finds a boundary or whether it finds a new one. Stay with us.